Hello everybody, I'm Michael Hubbub and I'm presenting my California K-12 policy assignment. My group's project was on the California K-12 public school and how to reform them. My presentation will mostly be talking about the public schools and their budgets. A quote to remember while going through this presentation comes from Benjamin Franklin: "An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest." Like most things, our history defines us, and the public schools are no different. Public schools in California have three sources of revenue: federal, state, and local government. When it comes to the funding structure of public schools, there are a few major events that have molded the system to what it is today. The first being Serrano v. Priest, which was a court case in the California Supreme Court. The court favored the plaintiff's argument that the current funding structure at the time discriminated against poorer citizens. This forced the California government to redistribute funds from richer schools to more poorer schools that needed the money. Many California voters didn't like the decision at the time and believed that their taxes were unfairly redistributed, so they decided to pass Proposition 13, which limits the property tax to 1% of the purchase price of a property and imposed a 2/3 vote threshold for raising taxes. A few years later, Proposition 98 was passed, which placed a constitutional set minimum of 40% to the California public schools, which meant 40% of California's budget would have to go to public education. In 2007, due to the Great Recession, budget cuts were enforced. In total, California students lost $3,000 per student due to these budget cuts. In 2013, Governor Jerry Brown passed school reform known as the Local Control Funding Formula, which helped poorer schools receive a little bit more funding due to need instead of test results. And these are just a few events that have shaped the history of California public schools. The current state of California public schools is not in the best of conditions. Currently, we have 6 million students and 11,000 school districts. California has the worst student-teacher ratio of 22:1. 80% of students attending California school districts fail to meet minimum industry standards. It's not as bad as the picture to the right, but they all could use a little improvement. California has a dropout rate of 1 in every 10 students. California is ranked below average in math, reading, and science. 49% of California students are not meeting grade level standards in reading, and 60% of students aren't meeting those standards in math. California's 8th graders ranked 40th in math comprehension and 37th in reading across the country. As you could see, there are many places where California could improve further down the line. In this part, we will be discussing the funding for California public schools. California ranks the highest in total spending when it comes to education at $76 billion. That's the highest any state spends on public education. Public schools receive $7.8 billion from the federal government. That's the most any state receives in financial aid. However, that's due to California's large population. The state spends $51 billion and local governments spend $30 billion. Per pupil, spending is only $12,000. That's 22nd in the nation, and adjusted for California costs, it becomes 41st in per pupil spending. It's obvious California needs to spend more money on public education. So where's the money going? Like all businesses, most of the expense comes in labor costs, and schools are no different. Schools spend 85% of the money on labor salaries and benefits. California teachers are the third highest paid in the nation. However, due to California's cost of living being the third highest in the nation, it evens itself out. So what could schools do to lower the costs so they could put more resources in other categories? Well, they could cut wages. That won't happen considering that some teachers are already striking for higher pay. Cutting wages doesn't look like a possibility. They could fire teachers. Since I already stated California has the worst ratio of students to teachers, that doesn't look like it's in the best interest of the students. California schools could go through reforming benefits, and that's the main focus of my argument. My proposal would be to change the current retirement benefit plan of a defined benefit to a defined contribution plan. I'm not the only one thinking this way, as many California school districts are thinking the same way, even with Governor Newsom's 2019 budget plan projecting $101 billion to the public school system. So what does the current retirement plan look like? In California and most states around the country, government employees receive what is known as defined benefits retirement plan. And since teachers are considered government employees, they too receive defined benefit retirement plan. A defined benefits retirement plan requires both the employer and employee to contribute and will provide the employee with a guaranteed lifetime payment upon retirement, regardless of how much they contribute to the trust fund. In a defined benefit plan, the investment strategy is completely controlled by the employer. This kind of retirement plan was favored both in the public and private sector in the early 20th century, until private companies were feeling the pressure of lingered fixed costs and dropped this type of retirement plan. It's only due to the government's ability to tax do these type of retirement programs still exist. In California, this program runs through the CalSTRS system. The problem with a defined benefits retirement plan, the first being the payment amount is fixed. That means no matter how much the employee was putting in, the amount they receive could be completely unjustified. The second thing, and it's unfortunate to say, but people are living a lot longer on average. 70% of CalSTRS members are women who on average live longer than men, which puts even more strain on the school budgets later down the line. My new retirement plan is nothing earth-shattering. A defined contribution plan has been the leading retirement in the private sector since the 80s, also known as a 401k, a 403b, or a 457b. These plans require both the employers and the employees to contribute, similar to a defined benefits plan. However, this account is in the control of the employee and they choose the best investing strategy. That means every retirement plan could be different. Upon retirement, the employee receives a regular payment from the account until the funds in the account are exhausted, unlike a defined benefits plan where it doesn't end until the employee dies. Here are a few details of the plan. This could get a little wordy, so hang in there with me. Schools would match employee contributions up to 7% instead of the average 6%. Those who are already on the current defined benefits plan will stay on those plans, which means retirees. These next few steps need to be considered in that CalSTRS teachers on average have 25 years of experience. If any teacher has had more than 18 years of teaching, they will receive their full defined benefits as promised. If a teacher has more than 12 years of teaching experience, they will be switched over to a hybrid between heavily dependent on defined benefits and a defined contribution plan. Fourth, any teacher with more than 7 years of teaching experience will be switched over to a hybrid between defined benefits and be more focused on the defined contribution plan. Finally, any teacher who is new or with less than 7 years of teaching experience would rely entirely on a defined contribution plan. These steps are taken to better help an easing in process of the new retirement plan. Here are a few statements from critics of the plan. This new policy is more expensive than the current plan. In the short run, this is true due to the fact that retirees, up-and-coming retirees, and anyone on a hybrid plan will still be receiving defined benefits, and that payment will come out from local schools, state governments, and local governments. So in the beginning, this plan will cost a lot more than the current plan. However, when in the long run, when schools start switching everyone to this new plan, they will save money. Second, this new plan provides less in benefits than the current plan. Yes, this is true because no normal 401k plan could match government benefits. Government benefits have exceeded the average retirement plan, and that's normal considering governments have more money to spend on retirees than normal corporations. The third statement is that the defined contribution plan is less stable a retirement plan than defined benefits plan. A defined contribution plan relies heavily on the stock market, while a defined benefits plan relies heavily on the government. And while stocks could go up and down during that time, most governments don't go bankrupt and are able to pay off their benefits. However, this is the most common retirement plan for most people in the private sector, and if it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for our current public school teachers, considering that even private school teachers rely on this type of plan. To sum up, even though California is the biggest state when it comes to population and GDP, it still has to deal with the basic rule of economics and that there are limited resources. If California wants to see an improvement in math, reading, and science in these schools, they need to free up some loopholes and spend more resources on their students. That is what my proposition of switching to a defined contribution plan does in the long run. If California wants to fix its school infrastructure, supply modern technology, and even might want to hire more staffers down the line, it has to deal with their budget crisis. This is just one of many other reforms to the California K-12 public school system that my group will be supplying. Thank you and have a nice day. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy.